Okay, as they're trying to get this thing working properly, let me at least make a few announcements which will delight you. Just in case nobody has told you that, please, mobiles and IT phones are forbidden. In the future, you may even come to me for a course equivalence from some well-known university in the world, and on this, and you have to give me the syllabus. And on the syllabus itself that's handed out to you, there's a clear notation that mobiles and IT are not allowed in class even, so certainly not in a lecture like this, because number one, they distract people around you. Number two, that you don't develop the skill of just simply listening, taking notes, which is something you'll need whatever your job is. And so part of what we try to train you in is to, go through the horrible experience of a miserable CVSP lecture, but you will gain the skill of listening, trying to understand what's being said, taking notes about it. We give you very full fly sheets. In my day, we had to sit down at the UB and just take notes of the whole lecture, and we had nothing else. Now you have so much to help you, but you're going to lose the skill of actually listening and taking notes. So please do that. One item about this also is that we sometimes invite lecturers who are not part of AUB, and they're very disturbed and insulted when they come, that they prepared a lecture and they look out at you all, and you're either talking to each other or you're playing on a mobile. I'm sure you don't do this. I'm just announcing this as a general announcement, for the global announcement for the whole world. So please, put all mobiles and IT machines away. Spend a little bit of time trying to do this exercise. If you do this from time to time, and we used to take 201, 202, 203, 204, if you'd taken that 4, by the end of it, you'd be very well ready to be accepted as a doctor, as a lawyer, as an engineer, as whatever it is you dream to be. Because nowadays, so many people are competing for these jobs that they always look to see at the humanities aspect of your CV, and to see if they can judge just how well would you be able to do the things that you do outside of your own profession. And that's why a university is not a technological school. That's why we claim to be a liberal arts university, and we try to teach you to be in critical thinking and flexible, so you can adjust in your job to whatever you're doing. Well, believe it or not, but if you take these CVSP courses seriously and other things you're doing at university, that's a very important skill. Don't sort of neglect it. Now, obviously, this thing is not working very well, so I'm going to have to give you a... it is. Okay, full screen. Back to the beginning. All right, thank you. Can I now? It won't work on that. Okay, it's not working on the screen, but at least I can look at the screen you're all looking at, which isn't really very helpful. The fly sheet, by the way, is not something I'm going to go through fully with you today. The first page is the most important. I'm going to introduce you to some basic understandings of how Greeks who were first listening or attending this play, because plays are exciting. It's not just, you don't just listen, you participate if it's a good play, well presented. All right? But the play is functioning to give you truth. Today you normally want to find it in theory and technology and that. The medium of poetry, by now you should know that in this course, the medium of mythos, of presenting truth through imaginative stories, through symbolism, through characters, was very, very important before people could move into a different kind of a mode of communication. But it's now become very weak in us. So we have, evolution has gone downwards in terms of the kind of human we produce today from this point of view. Being able to grasp things about life and your own life and truth through many ways, not just looking for science and the web and whatever you can get there quickly so you can get a good grade or something like that. So it's now a vision of human existence means, that's the fly sheet. Sophocles is the author. Oedipus the king is the story. The second one in the book, if you buy the book, there's Antigone, there's Oedipus the king, and there's Oedipus at Colonus. If you've read all three of them, I'm sorry, I'm sure many of you have done that. But now, if you haven't read any of them, read the second one, Oedipus the King. That's the only one you're assigned, by the way. By the way, I try to make jokes, so I try to pretend like you're smiling at least, or giggling. Okay, all right. So that's another way of presenting truth, by the way. You don't have to present truth in a way that's so unenjoyable and difficult and all this. You can also present things, in a way that will help people to get the point. So, if you just go through the fly sheet at the very beginning, the origins of drama comes from the epics that you've been taking. So, first of all, there was in Homer. And all the Homeric epics and the way the truth came to them through Homer. Homer was their Bible, was their Quran, was their Communist Manifesto, was their whatever, basic book they take. So don't think this literature was just what it is for you and me today. It formed people who then formed other people who have formed us. And some of the things they saw through what they're presenting here have continued to endure. For better or for worse, for example, we try and tell you about good things, but for worse, and it's not the fault of Homer. Homer conceived of the cosmos, the first main topic here, the universe, not like the world of Gilgamesh, chaotic and random, and humanity survives only because Utnapishtim has a wasta, he's a good Lebanese, He has somebody powerful in the council of the gods, and so he goes against the agreement of all the gods together, and then doesn't take even responsibility for it at the end. He pretends, he heard it in a dream. He doesn't say, I gave him the dream, if you've read Gilgamesh. Right? So the character of Gilgamesh is not very far away from the character of Oedipus, once you understand what that culture was trying to present to us. I'm going to try to convince you, if I have enough time, that the basic qualities of the tragic hero, Oedipus, are the same basic qualities that you have already seen in Gilgamesh, but in a different culture, a different story, etc. But the basic vision, and the basic vision, is basically what I'm going to be trying to help you understand better, is based on the way they understood the universe, the cosmos, the world they live in, the divine, the way they understood human community, the polis now in Athens, the polis from which we get police, unfortunately, but the polis from which we get political. The polis represented human community, all right? And it became an ideal for them. We want to work for the best possible human community, the best possible polis. And when you flip over to Socrates and then to Plato, the first work you're going to read in Plato is going to be his attempt to use reason. The Republic is not just a work of, idealism or something like that. It's a careful attempt to try to give an answer to the tragic vision of saying that if you use your mind properly in order to understand yourself, the polis, the cosmos, you'll find life is not tragic, that life is actually rationalistic, and, things will be, there is reward and punishment. If you noticed in the Gilgamesh story, the dream of the underworld tells you that however you live your life, you're all going to that miserable place, you see? And that's why in Gilgamesh, this is the scientific impulse. The critical examiner. He doesn't just accept what's given to him, all right? Even if it's given from the gods. Utnapishtim, there's one person who is immortal. I'm going to go and investigate. This is the scientific impulse, all right? Critical thinking. I'm not just going to accept what's given to me, especially if it seems so absurd, and if I've now experienced death and what happens to you after death with Enkidu, someone I can, see myself in, then I'm going to go and find an answer to it. This is the tragic hero, you say. And he wastes his life on it, and he doesn't get it, finally. But what do the people consider him as? A wonderful hero. He's the one who's brought us such wonderful things. Had he not done that, the community would not have all the wonderful things that we have. The only reason we have them is because this man didn't just take things for granted, but tried to live his life at its heights. And we'll see that this is going to be the same message of the rationalists, of the tragedians and the rationalists, if I would be able to tell you about the rationalists, but I won't. But basically, this is at this time, people in different ways were trying to ask the question, how do you really become a full human being? Hero meaning not hero in the way we understand it, but a human who's a somebody rather than a nobody. You've been into the Odyssey, you see. And so you can take those two words as a way of helping you understand a lot of great literature and even great religious symbolisms and things like this. The human being, how can you be at your best? How can you not live the life of just seeking power and just seeking success and just seeking fame? And that's natural. That's that's our animal nature, to survive and to get the most and all that. Okay, but is that all that there is? This was the sophists when you get to Plato. Life is about power. When you get power, you set the rules. You decide what is justice. You decide what the individual human decides truth for the sophists. They were the main philosophers in Athens at this time. But you had the tragic poets, and you had Socrates, the philosopher who was trying to give you another philosophical approach, which kept what the others, other than the sophists, all were agreeing on. Life is about being a somebody, not a nobody, about making a difference, whether it's in your family, whether it's at your university, whether it's in a job, or whatever it is. Don't just be a nobody. A nobody is somebody who just, takes it easy and avoids pain and doesn't, Gilgamesh should have listened. There's no immortality. Had he never gone on these journeys, the human community would never gotten all the wonderful things he had discovered for them, right? But he had to pay a price. That's why it's tragic. Excellent, seeking excellence, seeking to be a somebody. That's the only immortality you get. He finds out he wants real immortality, all right? But that's the immortality of most of these other cultures. His name is remembered, first of all, by his people, otherwise it wouldn't be transmitted, but then it's transmitted from century to century, and so you become immortal through, the immortality of your name. And this, of course, is the heart of the Gilgamesh story. It's the heart of the Homeric stories. Odysseus is a tragic hero in the sense that in order to get fame and glory and heroism, he has to give his name to the Cyclops. Otherwise, he's a nobody, because he's tricked. He's using his reason to trick the Cyclops by calling himself nobody. And so when the other Cyclops come to save him, they say, what's happening? When he's screaming, he says, nobody has blinded me or something. And, oh, nobody's blinded you? Bye-bye, have a nice day. This is the imagery here, the symbolism, you see, is that the divine does not represent the excellent. The divine does not represent even the good. In the Odyssey, Homer says, Zeus gives more evil than good. So the world you live in, don't expect it to be a wonderful world that's going to report you, is focusing on you and helping you and taking care of you. This is going to be the main difference between this and the rationalists. The rationalists are going to take the same basic goals, the Apollonian goals at the bottom, know thyself and balance is best, but they're going to interpret it in a rationalistic way, in a way that if you do use your mind properly and carefully and you get society to be more and more reorganized on that basis, then life does not have to be tragic. And Oedipus, this would not happen to somebody who was really trying to avoid killing his father, and that's the story here. He is fated to kill his father, marry his mother. So as a critical thinker, as a rational human being, as a moral human being, I'm not going to sit around and wait for the day when I kill my father or my mother. I'm going to do the rational thing. So he goes first of all to the god Apollo to try to get some information from him. And the god Apollo, if you read if I have enough time, I'll even have it as a slide there. And all this, by the way, is on the web. Everything on this one. But I want to get the message across in the short time I have. Basically, he goes to the god Apollo, but instead of helping him in any way, he spurns him. He's zabalny in Russian. You know the word zabalny? If you don't, teach your friends who are not Lebanese. All right. He spurned me. So there's no help coming from the gods, necessarily, unless they happen to favor you in some way. All right? And then he flashes a horrible future in front of me. Like a horror thing. So this is the way they were presenting how they understood their gods. The divine, the most powerful thing in the world. The cosmos itself, the universe is divine. And no god is more powerful than the system. The god here is the cosmos, the universe itself, a finite but eternal being, which was worshipped even. And it is shared out. So you get now a picture of some order, which you didn't get in the world of Gilgamesh. There is order. So the word cosmos itself meant order, but order always meant beauty. And beauty means proportion, order, system, everything in its place. So from Homer, and this is functioning, you see, to understand the Oedipus story from the point of view of Sophocles as much as one can try to do. All right, but that should be the first attempt of scholarship, is empathy, not just to impose somebody's theory later on the text itself. See what they were saying, you might get something, the other person is giving you his views, but you want to hear these views. Maybe the one who gives you an Oedipus story later or interprets it later is missing out on something that these people were saying. Because this tragic understanding of life lives on into our own century. All right, and the most obvious ones were the atheistic existentialists in the 20th century, Camus and Sartre and people like that, who were taking on the same vision that life, we have reason, we use reason, and all of this, etc. We have all of this, but there are no gods. We have, it's up to what we do, all right? And basically, the world simply isn't just simply a rationalistic or moral or monotheistic world, all right? So atheistic existence, but you should be heroic, all right? It's you who create yourself. You are making yourself by what you do. So the human is the focus in this ancient polytheistic culture, the literature. It's the human that's the focus, not the gods. The gods just represent forces you have to deal with, in a sense. All right? And so by the time of Sartre and Camus and people like that in the 20th century, of course, no gods exist whatsoever. They don't deal with gods anymore. The human has become God. So when Nietzsche rebels against the mediocre, soporific society he was living in, he says, God is dead. But he wasn't a God, just a garden variety atheist. He was saying, God, if there's a real God, then I should be seeing the effects in the human community that believes in this God. And I look around, I see a consumer society beginning, where you're the clients, where the marketers. It's become much, much worse. Nietzsche was one of the first people to see this happening in the 19th century. That's why nobody understood him until the 20th century. He saw that the world was becoming more and more mediocrity. No one was even encouraging people to be excellent, to be a somebody and not a nobody, to care for the human community and humanity, not just for themselves and stuff like that. So Nietzsche's atheism was a very different sort of atheism than you will see, but that was the beginnings of atheistic existentialism. So the tragic vision, I'm going to try to help you understand the meaning of it, and then try to point out in the text of Oedipus how Sophocles is presenting it. Will take us through, first of all, the cosmos. So if you take a look at the fly sheet, since I'm rushing through all this, basically the cosmos itself is this one eternal divine being, and it is the most powerful factor in everything that happens. The gods, they simply are parts of the cosmos. They are not outside. They're not the creator. But this cosmos has been divided into three major aspects, okay? The heavens, the sea, and what happens to you in the underworld after you die, the underworld. And the three gods who came to represent these things was Zeus, the so-called father of the god, because indeed he produced sons and children, and he was the son of someone that he had castrated, and that one that he had imprisoned. That's Kronos, and then Kronos had castrated Uranus, but they never get back to one God the way a monotheist might think of God. All right, the God is the cosmos, the universe itself. But you can start to understand it. You see, the poets are trying to already help you be a critical thinker and use your mind. You can understand it. It's not like what the Gilgamesh story tells you about. It tells you, there's order there, and no one power can go against the order. So an Ea could never save mankind just because he had an Utnapishtim favorite, the Wasta story. That's not rational. That's not clear. If humanity is existing because the gods don't act the way you saw them act in that other story. The gods are really, basically, then they respect the limits of each other, but what they represent. Oh God. Okay, these are some of the other major gods. Athene, who comes to represent wisdom, Athens, and Athene, you know her. She's you see, very logical. Athene is associated with Odysseus because they both represent the same human power, the use of the mind. Okay, Aphrodite, there's Haifa and Ishtar, and nobody knows Haifa anymore. Who's the latest goddess of beauty? Right? You had Ishtar, you see, and you remember Ishtar. And Gilgamesh doesn't want to marry her because he's a critical thinker. He looks at her past. I don't want it to have happened to me. He speaks rationally to her, but she's not rational. Baba, lecture amil fi. He goes back to the Zaim or the head to her daddy and gets Gilgamesh into trouble. Okay, this is how they understood life was, like a bad, corrupt human society where there are some big powers who decide everything. Aphrodite is the goddess of beauty. Okay, so she's with Helen. Helen is the one that, that starts the war. Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Shakespeare will say later on. Helen's beauty had the Prince of Troy, Paris. Nice name, because Paris in the modern world represents that. But basically, Paris, and I hope you've heard the story of the War of Troy. That's how the War of Troy starts, because he goes and steals Helen from Menelaus, and because of that they have to get revenge, and that's supposedly one of the reasons why the war in Troy started. Okay, but the goddess who's connected to Helen is Aphrodite, not just a random god, Aphrodite, because Aphrodite represents that sort of thing. That's me down there in one of my previous reincarnations. Okay, Herodotus takes us into history. You'll be going through this now in 201 when you get into, but not Herodotus. Now we're doing Thucydides, but Thucydides and Herodotus were the ones who introduced us to presenting a view of you, especially Thucydides. That's why we favor him over Herodotus. Although Herodotus is a wonderful work, but Thucydides kind of focalizes the way you have to understand life, and so life should be approached rationalistically. He doesn't bring the gods into it all, eyewitness history, etc., etc., etc. However, look what happens to the great Athens. The tragedy of Athens is one way that Thucydides' work has always been understood, because they stopped using reason in the best possible way, the way they were doing it with Pericles, supposedly. Then their leaders become corrupt and all of that, and so this leads to their tragedy. So you have the tragedy of the polis, Athens, which had been so important in educating all of the Greeks. It is defeated by Sparta because they start to go for might is right rather than that. Right, there are principles, and so he talks about how important that is. That this is the natural way people think. Might is right. Get strong. The stronger will win. But if you read Thucydides carefully, he's attacking that. He's criticizing that. He's saying that's the major reason why Athens was defeated. That they went away from principles of justice and that reason had been giving them. So the tragic vision we will be seeing, hopefully, you will be seeing it back to Gilgamesh, back to Odysseus, who has to give his name, and it's only because he has to give his name so that he can be famous and have the only wonderful thing you can have in life, because Hades is where everybody goes. Then when Achilles is used to tell him that death is the most horrible thing, you'd expect Homer to have Odysseus change. He's no longer risking his life anymore for truth. He's no longer risking his life for something better. He becomes a mediocre power seeker. He doesn't. Now he becomes a hero, a critical hero, a hero who knows that what's in store for him. If this happened to Achilles, it's going to happen to me. But he continues to live as a human being, seeking to be a somebody, doing all the great things that humans in every culture, in one way or another, is presented to us, a model for how we should live our human life. The tragic, then, the theme will go through both Gilgamesh, Homer, even the Odyssey of the Iliad is much more obvious there. And then finally, because the ending of the Odyssey also, another epic is about to start. That's the natural, logical thing that should happen. But now the gods come in an illogical way. The only time one of the very few times Homer ever, he has to end the story. So he brings in, Zeus and Athene and Bibos Ubadon or Wahdi Watani. It's not the logical. It's not the logic of the story. You see, the logic of the story is tragic. Whatever you do, it's just going to lead you into more and more and more that. But be a somebody. You make a difference when you're a somebody. If it wasn't for Odysseus, we wouldn't have all this scientific information he was gathering about the particular peoples. He was the Cyclops and others. Okay, so the cosmos is primarily order, and order, beauty come together, and basically this is an aesthetic approach to human life. There are many different moralities, all right? The basic way you approach life can be called a morality. And a basic morality can tend to be understood at least in three categories, although there are many, many more, subcategories. But aesthetic, meaning the main thing in life is beauty. And you're not going to understand the story of Oedipus if you don't understand that. in what's happening in the story of Oedipus is he's going against the beauty, the order of the cosmos. He's doing something ugly. They never accuse him of being wicked. He's always a great man, right through to the end. And if you haven't gotten the point by the end, read the last chorus, where Sophocles is summing up what he wants you to understand. This is the most brilliant of men. This is the most powerful of men. This is the best of men. That's how he's being presented by the people all through the story. All right? But look what happened to him. Whatever he tried to do with his reason, the rationalist, you say, look at that. He winds up, he's blind. The human being is blind. Human reason is simply not sufficient to really see everything. But you have nothing else. Only when you do use it and you be a somebody, you do something for he saves the polis of Thebes twice. He saves it from the plague, first of all, of the Sphinx, and then he saves it, in the story you're reading, from the second plague, only because he refuses to be a nobody. He continues to be a somebody as best he knows how to do it. But because it's a tragic world, he winds up, you cannot avoid the order of the cosmos. And he has unknowingly, blindly, in self-defense, killed his father, the king of Thebes, and he never knew that. He was running away from his father and mother, so he would never do that. But somebody attacks him, Range Rovers, motorcycles, blah, 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 and then the leader starts to hit at him. And so, he kills them all except for one person. It's a story. Somebody has to relate what happened. The shepherd who comes in at the very end, at the very, very end, you see, because Oedipus, the main point happening in the story, is a new plague has come upon Thebes. He has been elected king. When he comes into Thebes, he has saved them from the Sphinx. Does anybody know the answer to this drop quiz? I see it's symbolic. What walks on 4 in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening, at dusk? The human, mankind, the human, you see? That's the point. This is a story about you and me. This is a story about humanity. Not a story about Oedipus, whatever his last name is or first name is. All right? It's a symbol of a somebody who does something for himself. He's gotten a name. He's become immortal through his name. He's satisfied himself, dignity, self-dignity. He's helped the polis. The only one who saved them from the Sphinx, the only one who could answer that riddle was Oedipus. That's why they're no longer under the plague of the Sphinx. Wasn't allowing any handsome man to go in or out, at a blockade, the Sphinx, unless she had sex with this young man and then killed them, devoured them. Praying mantis, my wife. There are other examples of this in biology. But this is how they saw that what he had saved them from. So the symbolism, he had saved them from something horrible through the use of reason. So he's being presented right from the beginning. He's the one who uses reason. I'm a rationalist. Please listen to me. They're debating with the rationalists who are saying reason can know everything. They're trying to tell you reason is wonderful. Reason is all you have. Reason will make of you self-dignity. It'll help humanity, the polis, but you will not don't expect reward. That's the tragic message. Because if you live to expect reward, you'll either become mediocre or you'll be very disappointed and shocked. So be ready for life. Life is about you. You be a somebody. You do something for the polis, the human community. You cannot be human outside of a human community. So the more you serve your community, you're serving yourself. It's not something separate. As you serve yourself and serve the community in this best of possible ways, you get self-dignity, all right? You get immortality of fame, and you help humanity. This is the tragic message. Oedipus saves them, first of all. He's ruling them for some time before the actual plague that you read, the text you read. Now a second plague has come, years after the first one. He has ruled them for many years. They elected him as king. So Tyrannus is the original title in Greek of the king. They don't use the tyrant because it didn't mean tyrant. It meant someone elected. Isami, he made himself. He's proud of it. I wasn't elected. I'm not the son of a king. They elected me. So this is democracy. All right? So you have to think of this as a world of democracy. The chorus represents the people. At one point, if you miss that, you'll miss so much of what this story is about. The chorus beg him to do something that he thinks is going to cost him his life. And he tells them, well, if this is what you want, I'll do it. But I know it's going to cost me my life. What better democratic image of a democratic ruler? And all the way through, Sophocles is presenting him. He's concerned for the polis. Everywhere you see city, state, polis. He goes to Apollo, the divine. The divine doesn't help him. It just scares him. And then he goes on. He brings in the prophet, Tiresias, prophet. So you go from the divine to the prophetic. The prophet also is only concerned with himself. It's going to cause him pain, because if you think he tells him the truth, that you are the one who killed your father and buried a mother, and that's why there's this plague which has stopped humanity. It's like a total curse on all of humanity for them, and that's what it represents. All right? He brings in the prophet. He's very respectful to the prophet. Gives him all the respect he's due. The prophet says, I know what the remedy is, but I'm not going to tell you. Not going to tell me? Why? Aren't you interested in the polis? Aren't you interested in humanity? He says, if I had thought more about it, I wouldn't have even come, because this could only cause me pain and you pain. So pain becomes the major enemy of mankind. Becomes the main challenge, not the main enemy. Excuse me, all right? Because normally you think of pain. So there's hedonism, Epicureanism, utilitarianism. You'll be exposed to Epicureanism. This is a string of philosophies that finally tell you what's life about. Maximize your pleasure, minimize your pain. So your worst enemy is pain, you see. And what you want is pleasure. And then in utilitarianism, well, you can't, as an individual, be happy if the maximum number of people in your community are not happy. So utilitarian tells it's still master. What you live for is to maximize your pleasure and avoid pain. So anybody who's done anything for humanity, is the message, is like a Gilgamesh or like an Odysseus or like all the great heroes in Homer, like an Antigone, like an Oedipus, the people who knowingly that they're not living in a life that's going to reward them, they don't live for reward. And suffering and pain is not their worst enemy. On the contrary, for the tragedians, if you're running away from suffering all the time, you're going to get suffering. But if you don't learn to make use of it, you don't learn how it makes you more mature. When did Gilgamesh start to get mature? When he experiences the death of Enkidu, who now is like himself. So suffering. When Gilgamesh starts to become human when he suffers. Not when he accepts at the end. When he accepts at the end, that's his surrender. That's not his resignation. Right? And so they tell him at the end, look, don't be sorry, don't be sad. You see, the text itself speaks to you, all right, about how the people who are presenting this character didn't want to look upon you as someone stupid, immature, who didn't want to accept the facts of life or something. No, he's the person who would, whatever culture, whatever stage you're in, be a critical thinker, investigate. Be a true scientific spirit, but it's going to cost you. Great science has come only because people suffered, and they lived against sort of the beliefs of their society at a certain point. There's nothing that has advanced without suffering. So the tragic message was that suffering is not your enemy. It can actually be a very, very important thing too. You need to know how to use it with your reason. Don't just suffer for suffering's sake. Avoid it when it's not necessary. But don't stop your desire to be a good student because studying is going to be hard or something like that. Don't cheat because it's easier to cheat than to study. You can translate this in any way and wherever you are. You are living as a somebody or a nobody just by being a human. And these are models for you that you're getting in the first part of this. So in this cosmos, the main thing is order and beauty. It's an aesthetic morality. Good and evil, therefore, are what brings order and beauty is good. What destroys or disrupts beauty and order is bad. So ugliness. And so what Oedipus does is ugly. Think of it in terms of beauty. Killing his own father, sleeping with his own mother, having children now who are his half-sisters or whatever. All right? It's ugly. They never say you're wicked. They don't incriminate him. They don't condemn him, the chorus, the people. All right? They lament him. How could this happen to you? Such a wonderful person. And so the climax is all about that. Appearance and reality. In appearance, you seem to be so great, and we've never seen anything bad from you. All right? But in reality, the reality of the cosmos, you're the most miserable of people. How could this happen to you? How could such an ugly thing happen to you? It's lamentation. All right? You lament someone you love, someone that you respect. You don't lament a criminal. You condemn a criminal. He's getting his good reward or something. So in this world, the morality of good and evil is based on how much you are keeping the order and the beauty of the cosmos. The focus is not on you as a human. You as a human have to do that, because if you don't, you're going to get nemesis, the automatic punishment. Well, you cannot run away from it, no matter how much time passes. But you can be a somebody rather than a nobody. So the rest of the points there on that fly sheet are to to fill that out. It's impersonal. I give you the line numbers from the text you're using to see where you can find textual illustration for all of this. It's impersonal. It's not made for you or me, neither a rational coordinator of the universe, nor a merciful Rahman Rahim, loving God. Oh, no, the world is simply the system, and you are part of this system. Not a very important part, but an important part. And you're the only one who has reason, so therefore you, in the way they understood reason, so therefore be a somebody. But don't expect, because the world there are three dimensions. You're never going to understand what's happening to you at any time through the cosmic influence, the political influence, and the private influence. It's just too much for reason. You use reason all the time, but you can never really understand it. You're blind. Blindness is the key theme here of the human being. Limitation. Everything is limited. The order itself is there, but it's ambiguous. It's not clear. The truth is hidden. Aletheia. It's concealed, and only, sometimes it reveals itself, and then you see it. But you can't just simply think you're going to understand the truth of the cosmos, of the universe, just by using reason. Well, he used reason. He couldn't even know the truth about himself. He thinks he knows the answer, man, but he doesn't know who the human is. See, this is the tragic irony. He solves the riddle, and it's sufficient to get rid of the plague. But for the audience and for us reading it, what he's telling you is he knew zilch about finally who he really was, who his parents were, who as a human, because he was operating as a rationalist. He's going to, using his reason, he's going to solve all this. The curse of having to kill his father and mother, through reason he can run away from it, right? And then who is responsible for the new plague? Somebody has killed your king and you didn't, Apollo sends, and you never revenged him. The ugliness. And when this happens, all of everything affects each other. The cosmic, the political, everything is affected when you first read the text there. So the second plague, he now, again, as a critical thinker, as a rationalist, as a great political leader, all right, he's going to find out the truth no matter what it is. And he starts looking for the truth, and we all know it's him. He's the one who kills his father and marries his mother. But nobody knows about this because of the way the story happens once you read it, all right? No one has ever known his true identity, all right? So he thinks he's saved Thebes twice, and they've made him king, and he's marrying the widow now of the king who was killed, and she's the widow of the king. He doesn't know that she's his mother, right? And he does his political role wonderfully, and you see him, always concerned for the polis. The prophet doesn't care about the polis, because he's a human, but he has such powers. He's a psychic. He's the people they bring up to you on New Year's Day to tell you about, or your astrologers who tell you how every single day what's going to happen to you or something like that. He has some psychic powers, but nothing to do with goodness or morality or concern for the human reason. You see, Tiresias is presented as the opposite, in fact. So don't look for the divine or the prophetic or people who have some kind of psychic or supernatural powers for the truth. Look for humans and how humans have developed their understanding of what is true by being somebodies, and there you're more likely to get what's true about humanity. So as you see what happened to Oedipus, you get what life is all about. You don't get it from either the prophet or Apollo. You see, and remember that. And you don't get it from the sophists, because your casta represents the sophists. Don't believe in all this stuff. It's all nothing. Man is the measure of all things. No, he's the model that Socrates and Plato and Aristotle take up in rationalistic philosophy. But for them, you will see, for them, reason has much more power than was given there. And you need to develop it by changing the education system, the social institutions, everything. And then if you do that, then you'll discover the world is run by goodness. And these gods only represent, Zeus represents justice, but rational justice, not the justice of the order of this system. Each one, Aphrodite represents the beauty, as an inspiration for you. Athena represents wisdom. You see, he rationalizes the gods and goddesses. So they still believed in these gods. Even Aristotle, the sort of more extreme rationalist, builds a statue to Athena and Zeus in Athens himself. So they were by no means atheists. They simply were trying to help people understand what is the true meaning of the divine that's being presented to you. Don't just take it at surface value. See what these things represent. So basically, then, the world is so ambiguous. It's given. It's just there. I mean, nobody can change it, not even the gods. Zeus can never do anything. He is not, isn't. When he tries to do something with Poseidon, Poseidon sort of challenges him and tells him. And they're all on. If you go through the whole thing at home on the web, that's why we now have these things. Prometheus becomes the model for the human being, and he's the one who brings fire to humanity. The gods, for whatever reason, did not want to give fire to humanity. Imagine what humanity would be like without fire. Who brings it? It's not one of the gods, but Prometheus. Right? And what is his reward? He gets, there are different depictions of this story, by the way, in their legends, but the main one that usually is that he gets tied to a rock, and an eagle comes every single day and pecks away at his liver all day. And then the next morning, his liver has grown up again, and the eagle comes back and picks away at it forever again, and this happens forever. So this is his reward, because he's gone against the cosmos, you see, by trying to be a good human. So it's the stuff of atheism, of course, you see. If you really continue to believe the gods are like this, then why on earth would you believe that there are gods? It's the humans who are doing everything. At this time, there was also comedy, not just tragedy. This period was a great period, the period of Pericles, that the golden age of Pericles, supposedly a leader who came to represent more and more when wisdom and power come together. When you're not just being ruled by power, and you're not just being ruled by simply wise men as you normally understand a wise man, but it's the combination of the two. And if you understand Plato's philosopher king, he's bringing in this aspect into that. It's rarely understood sufficiently, because people understand philosopher the way they understand philosopher in the modern period. For Plato, the philosopher king is a rational way that could lead you to think about what are the qualities that you would want to have come together in your ruler, your king, all right? Should be a philosopher, a lover of wisdom. Should at the same time be a lover of wisdom, but at the same time know how to rule and all the dealings of power. So Pericles kind of came to represent that kind of an image. Solon before him, who was a relative of Plato, was the model of the lawgiver and the one of giving wisdom. Socrates representing philosophy, Thucydides representing history, Sophocles literature and drama. All of these were working at the same time, and so they had different understandings of the meaning of human life. Just like today, many people in the same society, scientists, but scientists, are very different in terms of how they understand life. Some of them are religious, some of them are atheists, some of them are agnostic, and there are many differences. Don't think, that there's anything simple in terms of how you understand life. All right, this is in the comedy, by the way, just to see that. He's making fun of Socrates. You see, Aristophanes in one of his great comedies, The Clouds, they're giving him a four-gun salute, if you can see it, and then he's up in the clouds somewhere. This is the misunderstanding of Socrates that led them to want to execute him. Athens democracy. At this time, the first attempt we know of in any detail of democracy, not like what we have now. You'll be learning more about that. The Parthenon, the Empire, Apollo and Dionysus become two of the major gods. Apollo is the major god of this particular story, and the functionally, not the only, but the functionally he becomes the main god, and he is the one. That's why the third point on your fly sheet of the first page, Apollo, comes to represent the ideals for human life. How can you be really a somebody? Live to know yourself, seek to know your true identity, not meditate on your belly button or something and get to know yourself through introspection. No. Get to know your real place politically, actually in the cosmos. And Oedipus is seeking to know who he is all the way through, and heroically at the cost of his own happiness and suffering. He's a champion of the god Apollo, because Sophocles, by the way, was a general in the army of Pericles. He was a great dramatist, and he was also a priest of the god Apollo. So the Apollonian ideals are now being presented for him through Oedipus, but with the tragic message. Seek to live life the way he's doing it, critical, know yourself better and better, what your real limitations and your real powers are in the cosmos. So you don't think your reason is so powerful, because this is his one really big fault. If you read Sophocles carefully, he's overconfident in his own human reason. Think the rationalists. See, they're dealing with somebody. They're not just talking up in the air. The rationalists were telling you that no, reason is sufficient if it's used properly by the philosopher. Only the very few people in the world can ever really know things. And that's why Plato says, well, such a person should be the one who rules you. But Plato also will tell you he should be very knowledgeable in all of everything, social and education and political. So he's not just wisdom in the sense of, a specialist in philosophy today or something like that. So the world is just given. That's just the way it is. It's lotted out, shares. So Zeus has his share. Poseidon has his share. Hades has his share. They cannot interfere with each other. You saw how Athene justified to Odysseus when he tells her, now you show up when he reaches land. Where were you when I was on the sea, for these 10 years and Poseidon was going at me? She tells him two things that are very important. One, that Poseidon is not absolute. And so the ultimate fate is determined by the council of gods together, and they never go against it the way Ea does in the Gilgamesh. See how the progression of giving order to humans, through poetic use of the understanding. He basically then he can never do anything. Athene belongs on the land because the earth belongs to all three of them. But on the sea, this is Poseidon. All right, and so I could not interfere there. I'm limited. But Poseidon is limited because Odysseus has been decided when all the gods got together. All right, they decided he would come home. So his coming home is part of the system. That's fate, if you like. But they thought of it in terms of shares, and they never thought of it as fatalism. So there's no problem of free will or determinism until you get into sophisticated philosophy and theology. It's a description of the human. We're determined, of course, but we're also free. We're both. If we really examine our lives carefully, existentially, not just through some rational dogma, all right, we discover we do have power to affect things. Every day we're affecting things. In our family, our things, and therefore this effect is going into the next generation, into history. We are affecting the way things are happening, but we're limited. So the determinism is your limitation, and this is the Greek view. This is Homer's view. He had no problem with free will or determinism because it wasn't, for him, I think he would think it's a stupid thing to waste your time on. You should think about it sufficiently, but finally come back to existential truth. You as a human being, as you're living, get all this information, but take a look at your life. Look at how you're living. How can you avoid the thing that you are responsible? Because fatalism and determinism, in a sense, are kind of letting you know, well, babe, it's okay. It's the excuse thing for whatever you do. I was determined. My father dropped me on my head when I was 5 years old, or whatever. Look at my society, or you're always sort of not taking responsibility. See, Gilgamesh takes responsibility. Oedipus, you'll see it, takes responsibility for what he did. The chorus tells him, "How could such a thing happen to you? What God made you do it?" Saying, "Well, it's all the fault of the gods." He says, "It was Apollo, of course, I am determined and limited by the gods, but my own hand did it." Responsibility is the issue here. Not are we free or are we determined. In some real way, are we responsible for what's happening in the world or not? And so the story then is about limitation. Every one of the gods has his limits. This is how things proceed. And therefore, what we see Oedipus being presented as, the model leader, the model scientific investigator, like Gilgamesh, you see, before the days of science as we understand it today, but the scientific spirit is there in every human from the time they're born. The philosophical spirit is there. You're all philosophers as people who will be seeking wisdom and hopefully loving wisdom. That's the meaning of philosopher. Then it becomes specialized and people start to categorize things, and then you have, all the sophisticated issues, which are interesting in themselves, and they're very important, but they're not the stuff of life. And so the humanities takes you, and these CVSP courses takes you through people in these societies, up to date on the greatest, the things they know at that time, but how they interpret life. And we're always interpreting life, and we get a lot of light from how people have interpreted life before us, to teach us that we can also get light from other people today, from other cultures. We don't have to follow any of them blindly, all right? And we shouldn't follow them just because they impress us or they're the latest fashion, all right? And then you're living the sophistical life, right? The somebody life means you're examining, you're thinking as much as you can, you're recognizing your own limits, you're not giving too much importance to any one human expert, the latest, Hawking, because he's a great astrophysics. He must know all about whether there's a God or not, So, what does he know about all the things that have led to how different peoples understand the divine, how they have understood the divine, and all of it? How much time has he spent on that? He's a wonderful, great astrophysicist, but people follow him into his next book, which clear atheism, as if his own astrophysics and all this can prove atheism in one of his books. That's just an example of something. You may have different view. By the way, everything you hear at university is to make you critical. It's not you accept it. It's for you to think about it. And then if you disagree with it, see why you disagree with it. You see, I'm throwing out at you one way of understanding this ancient literature and connecting it to what's happening in your own world today is to look for these qualities. Somebody versus nobody, someone who wants to serve humanity, the polis, not just himself, all right? Someone who wants self-dignity. So it's not just the reward you get from outside, fame and all that, but rather it's Gilgamesh had all the fame he wanted. He had everything that they were telling him you should do. He had all the pleasure that you could possibly have. He had all the power. It did not satisfy the human being. The true human being, the true somebody is always looking for something more. All right? And he was looking for immortality. But that doesn't mean that's the only thing that will make you I think whatever it is, we wouldn't have gone through science and through medicine and the advances we've done there if people stopped at any point. All right? They kept pushing it. Cancer is not. We're going to continue to work until we can get through it, okay? But it might take some real cost and suffering in various ways, you see. So life is tragic means this. Be a somebody. It doesn't mean it's pessimistic or negative or anything like that. On the contrary, it's heroic in the meaning of be a somebody rather than a nobody, but don't expect or be surprised if you're not rewarded, all right? Don't live for reward. Hope for reward, but if you're not rewarded, well, the world isn't made for you to reward you. It's made for itself. You get the best you can as a human, do the best you can for humanity. That's the heart of the tragic vision. So I've given you the fuller fly sheet because if you wish, you can follow through it and get more sort of on these same points. This is on the web, all the things I have there. You don't even need to go to Moodle or anything. It's just on the web. And by now, you should know how to access the web in 201 lectures. And by the way, they have presentation under Sophocles or Oedipus. And some people think presentation is not PowerPoint. Well, this is the presentation. Sometimes they put PowerPoint, sometimes they put presentation. I think in one of the courses they've just put presentation. So a student came back to me and said, I couldn't find it. And then I looked with them, and they had it as presentation. So if you want to take a look at all the PowerPoint stuff I would have liked to have used, they are there on the web. Thank you.